Welcome back to week 3 of our Spike Prime robotics lessons. I'm Mr. Spratt, and we're here in Sprattronics Learning Lab. Last week we built the rhinoceros, and we used our hub, we used 2 motors, and we also used a touch sensor to control our robot. We had our robot drive forward and backwards, and maybe if you started to explore the app, you started to try to make some turns. Well, today we're going to make a robot that can navigate a little better. We want one that can go forward, that can go backwards, that can turn left and right, and even maybe drive in circles. We're going to create a robot today that's going to navigate around some obstacles. And so this robot is going to need to be able to turn precise degrees. So today we're going to be using 2 motors. We are going to be using something called the yaw sensor, which is built inside your hub, and we'll learn more about that as we make the build and really as we start to code today. So, I like to think of this week's robotics in relation to sports. What's a sport that you enjoy playing, or that you enjoy watching on TV? Or what's a game that requires movement around a field or around obstacles in order to be good at? Maybe you enjoy playing soccer or football. Maybe it's tennis. Maybe you enjoy playing video games like Rocket League or Madden or Fortnite. No matter what, in all those games and those sports, you've got to be able to move around a field. I want you to take a moment and just think about a sport or a game and what are some of the field tactics you have to be able to do. And what I mean by field tactics is what movements do you need to make to be good at that sport or that game? Go ahead and think for a moment. So maybe in your game, such as soccer, you need to be able to move down the field. You need to move forward towards the goal, and then maybe you need to go across the field. So you've got to make a turn and go across. We're going to be building a driving base today that we're going to use for the next few weeks. If you still have your rhinoceros built from last week, you will need to take that apart because we're going to be using the hub and the motors from that build. You'll see some similarities between those 2 robots, but this one is a much stronger base, and we can add some more add-ons to this base to use it for the next couple of weeks. All right, we're ready to start our build now. So what we'll do is we'll have you navigate to spike.legoeducation.com, just like last week. As that loads, you'll see the Lego Education logo, and you'll see Spike. If you just get the wheel spinning, you can click the refresh button on your computer. Once you're there, you probably see select your Spike solution. We're using Spike Prime today. And from that, we're going to scroll down here to Unit Plans. We'll click on Unit Plans, and we're going to go to this yellow one called Competition Ready. This is where we'll be for the next 3 weeks. So first up is Training Camp 1, Driving Around, Controlling Movements Using Our Gyro Sensor. We'll click Start on that, and go ahead and watch this video. You can watch it on your own computer, or you can watch it right here. But this is a little bit about what we're going to do today. We're going to learn some competition field tactics. We're going to learn to navigate around obstacles. We're going to list some movements that our driving base can make. And you've already done this. And so you'll see in our build today, our robot is going to be able to drive around and navigate a little bit better. This bot will not be autonomous today. What that means is we're going to program everything on its own. So we're going to tell the robot exactly what to do. So once we've seen this video, we click over to step 2 out of 6, and we're ready to build. We're going to build a practice driving base. This is a good start for strong driving bases and strong builds. like always, I'm going to build the robot. If you want to follow along with me, you can. If I get ahead of you, you can pause the video. If you like to build in quiet or with music, you can always mute me or pause the video. And once you have the driving base built, go to our coding section. But let's get started by building our driving base. So as always, step one is going to show us to put a battery in our hub. We already have a battery in here, so we don't need to take it out and put it back in. All right, our first piece that it looks like we need is going to be this purple frame. These frames are awesome for making solid bases. They stay together really well as compared to trying to build a frame out of multiple beams. And this is the driving base that we typically start with anytime we're building a robot to do a specific function. And then we go back and try to change it or make add-ons to it to accomplish different requirements. So I put in 6 Technic pins, and now I'm ready to attach my 2 motors. I'm going to take apart something real quick so that I have a motor. All right, and I see that my motor is going to attach to these 3 black pegs on the front. And we'll do that 2 times. And then each motor, we're going to rotate the circles so that they match up, and then put 2 more black pins. And if you remember from last week, these black pins are how we are going to attach our wheels at a later step. All right, next we need those short yellow axles, and that's what we call these, axles. Mine still has the arrow attached. I'm just going to set that to the side because I will need that in a step shortly. All right, on top of our motors, we're going to add 8 of these Technic pins, and I am lining up my build so that it matches the picture, which means I have the blue circle part of the motor closest to me, the part that those yellow axles went in, and I have the blue part of the motor facing away from me. That way I can match the picture easily and know that I'm building everything correctly. Now we're ready for the hub, and I see that the button on the hub is away from me. I don't see a speaker on the front, but I do see the charging port and the Bluetooth button closest to me. So I'll set that down, and I'm going to need 2 of these. I call them H pieces. You'll use these quite a bit. They're really helpful for strongly and securely attaching pieces together. So I built 2 of those, and then I'm going to attach them onto the front of my hub. So the button is on the back. These pieces are going on the front closest to me, and they will flip around, and that's normal. At a later step, we're going to secure those in place. So now I flip my hub over, and I see now my pieces need to be away from me. And on the side closest to me, and I do see the speaker closest to me. So the side with the speaker, we'll put 2 of these Technic pins. I've built this one many times, and so I have a lot of the pieces right in front of me. If I'm going too fast for you, you can pause it while we build. And I put the step numbers up so that you can see exactly which step I'm on so that you can follow along. We're ready for this purple square piece, and I notice that these 2 holes on either side are going to be facing out from the hub. And so I press it down, which leaves me 2 open spots to put in more black pins, kind of on top of each other. And now I'm ready for my ball. And so we already attached the ball last week when we built the rhinoceros build. That'll attach right here. This makes it so that our robot can use just 2 motors, but still turn and stay stable. And it looks like in the side of this piece, we're going to add one of these tan pins that have an axle on the other side. This is going to be helpful for when we do wire management at a later step. I'm going to attach my yellow cable clip onto that. And now I'm ready to flip it over, and here comes one of the more challenging steps for this build. We have our frame, we have our hub, we need these things to attach together. So I'm going to turn these pieces so they're facing out on both sides. I'm going to have my wheel on the very back, and I'm going to press my hub down on top onto those inner pins. There we go, lined up. A good way to think of this is the very back of your hub where the button is going to line up with these inside black pins, and they'll snap in there pretty well. The front ones should snap in also. I like to turn it over and press firmly on it to make sure everything is in. I can still wiggle these pieces because I'm going to attach a bar or a beam in a later step, but yours should look just like this. The axle on the front, right next to these pieces, the button in the back, above the wheel, the ball wheel. All right, we're on to step 15 now. We're ready to build with one of these long beams. And towards the back of this beam, it looks like in hole number 4, we'll put another one of those axle pieces. Now we're ready for step 16, and the very end of this beam, I'm going to line up with the last Technic peg right back here. And I want to turn this piece so that it lines up with the beam. So it attaches in 3 different spots. So I've attached one beam right here, and you'll see that this piece now no longer wiggles. It's now attached to that black beam. The black beam's attached across the motor, and then I have the axle piece, or the wire clip piece right there. So now we're going to attach a wire clip to our wire. This part looks complicated, but really however you attach it, it's going to work pretty well. That wire clip should go towards the end, but what we're going to try to do is stretch this wire out, lay it flat in between the hub and the beam, and then fold it back and attach it to the wire clip, and then plug it in to C. And so we did about 3 steps right there. But by step 19, you should have one side plugged in to port C. We're now going to do the same thing, but on the other side of our hub. So we take the long black beam, we count up 4 spaces and put it in that 4th circle right there. I'll turn it around so it matches the picture. We turn our hub around, so now that the button is on our left side, we attach this so that the very end goes onto the back of the motor. We rotate this part around so that it's straight, and it takes a little bit of fidgeting, especially with those new pins in your brand new kit. Those are sometimes you have to press hard to get them in. But we're in. Our build right now looks just like this. Again with the wire, this time we are going to use the green wire clip. We stretch it out, we fold it over so that it lays down inside our black beam and our hub. It folds back on itself and clips into the wire clip, and then we're ready to plug it into D. There we go. And as long as these wires are out of the way of your wheels, you'll be just fine. The easiest way to break your motors is to tangle up your wires in the wheels and then not turn it off when it's tangled. All right, so we did step 22, 23, and 24 all right there. And now we have our bot ready to go. We're going to turn it around so that the front black beams are facing you, and it's time to attach 2 wheels to this bot. So I grab my 2 wheels out of my kit, and I'll just attach them so that the yellow axle goes through the middle and that the black pins connect to it. And this is a securely attached wheel. If we only attached with just the yellow axle, we would start to bend that axle eventually. But by adding the 2 extra pins, it makes that wheel more secure and makes everything turn like it should turn. Let's go ahead and add our rotation indicators so those are facing straight up on both sides. Just like that. So step 27. We can set our robot off to the side. The next couple steps, we're going to go ahead and build, but we're not going to actually use this week. Next week, we'll start using this motor. But let's go ahead and build it so we can do that together. And then next week, we can jump right in with a fully built robot and just start adding some things to it. So we're going to need our large motor. And that's the one that is bigger than the other 2 that we've used. You only have one of these large motors. And we need one of those small axle pieces. And those small axles are usually in tray number 4. And we're going to flip this over so that the blue is facing down. And we'll put the axle right into the back of it. All right, step 28. We're going to use a small gear. And I don't have one in that kit, but maybe these extra parts I have one in. There it is. So your smallest gear that you have in your kit, and those gears are in tray 7. And we'll just attach that right onto the little axle piece. Now we're back to 2 more of those H-looking shapes, those gray pieces that have the pins on both sides, and we're going to plug them into 2 of our small yellow beams, just like we did earlier. So they attach together here. On to step 30. We will put 4 black pins in. So I'm going to turn these so that they look just like my directions. And I see they're both facing to the right, and I'm going to put some pins inside them facing up. This is a way we're going to be able to mount this motor extra securely to our robot. So now they're going to go into the side with the yellow facing forward, and it's going to go into the second set of holes. So the front set of holes and the second set of holes. So it'll go right there, and you'll see that your yellow beam lines up perfectly with your axle. So again, second set of holes. We've got a nice straight line, yellow beam, axle, or gear. Yeah, gear attached to a red axle, and then another yellow beam. This is the step we usually have to provide help with for students here in the lab. You're going to take your robot, and the side with the 2 black beams facing out, the side with your Bluetooth button, you're going to first drop your cord all the way through and make sure it comes out the same side as your wire management clip. So we'll push that cord through. This purple base plate on here is a nice way to manage all your cables. And then our motor slides in there, and it'll just barely fit through everything. You will have to do a little bit of wiggling. And then you'll see these gray pins. 1 gray pin is going to attach to your already built bot. The other gray pin will just hang loose underneath. And you'll have to do just a little bit of fidgeting to make it attach. But this will go in once you get everything lined up just right. There we go. I found that holding it towards me and pushing firmly with 2 fingers on the yellow beams let it slide in. So now we're on to step 33, where we come around to the back, and we're going to manage this wire. We're just going to attach the wire to the wire clip. This will keep your wire from dragging the ground. And it's a good thing to take care of these wires, because if they get torn or if they get tangled up too much, it'll make your motor stop working. And Lego's really good about replacing the motors, but that's just something we don't want to have to deal with if we don't have to. And mine are used every day by hundreds of kids, and they've survived this long, so I don't think it'll be an issue for you. All right, this looks like we're just about done. Let's double check that our motors are plugged into the correct spots. I have a motor in C, a motor in D, and I have my large motor attached to E. And again, we're not going to use that large motor today, but we will use it next week when we add some attachments to it. All right, so we have our robot built. Now it's time to code. So down here on the side, we're going to click the blue arrow to the right, and we're ready to try some programming stacks. This step, we need to connect our hub. We'll turn the hub on by pressing the button. I see the heart program turns on right away, and now I'm ready to connect through Bluetooth to my computer. So the hub is on. I need to press my Bluetooth button one time, and then I click open, and my hub will pop up on the screen. Again, I click the blue pair button. This light turns solid, and my hub is connected. I know it's connected because it has stopped beeping, which is always a nice way to do it whenever we're doing these classes live online. I can hear the beeping, and then when I hear the beeping stop, I know my student has connected their hub through Bluetooth. So, we've been given some stacks of code. The reason we're giving you these stacks of code is so that you can go ahead and see some working code. Now we have 3 different stacks, 3 different options. So first up, when the program starts. This program stack does not do anything that you can see. It has a lot of importance to it, but it doesn't do anything. When we use 2 motors, it's always important to set the movement motors, to tell your hub which motors are used for driving. And for that, we just click on it, and we see that it's C and D, our 2 small motors. This tells our hub to ignore motor E as far as driving goes. And then this last block, set 1 motor rotation to 17.5 centimeters moved. What that means is that when this wheel goes around 1 time, 1 rotation, that's 17.5 centimeters. Last week we counted how many rotations would happen. This week we're telling the robot the exact measurement of how far 1 rotation travels. Something I want to bring your attention to is up at the top. We see C, D, and E. These are your 3 motors that are plugged in. And you'll notice that if you turn any of them, that number will change. So let's go ahead and turn our gear just a little bit, and I can see that mine went to 100. I turn it a little bit more. It's now 185 degrees. Go a little bit farther, 282 degrees. And then it started over. So I wonder if you can figure out what's the highest number you can get this gear to turn to. Go ahead and take a moment and just turn your gears and see how high you can get the numbers to get to before it starts back over at 1. All right, you may have noticed that each gear can only go to 359, and as soon as it hits 359, it jumps back over to 1. So we'll go real slow. I see 359, and then it goes back over to 0. So 360 degrees or 0 are when your circles on your motor line up. Let's jump down here to the bottom and let's test this robot. Let's see if it moves. So this is program number 0. We've not loaded this program on our hub, so what we need to do is press the play button and it'll send this program to our hub. And I saw our bot turn just a little bit. And that's because of this programming stack, when program starts. It says wait 1 second, set yaw angle to 0, Start moving right 100, wait until yaw angle is greater than 89, and then stop moving. We'll look into that in just a minute because this is the big thing that we're going to be learning about today, is yaw angle and then using that wait until code block again using yaw angle. But let's take a look down here. When we push play, this happens. But there are other ways to control your robot. This one says when left button pressed. Take a look at that, see what you think it's going to do, and then I want you to press the left button, that's this little arrow button on your hub, press it and see what happens. So reading through the code, come up with a prediction of what's going to happen, and then see if it works when you press the left button. Excellent. Now try that with the right button. Read the code, see if you can tell what's going to happen, and then press that right button. Awesome. So when I press the right button, my robot drives in a circular motion. And that's because we're just moving left at negative 40 degrees for 20 rotations. And so it makes our wheel here turn faster than our inside wheel, which causes our robot to turn that direction, and it'll go for 20 rotations. I want to dive into this stack right here when the program starts. So go ahead and press your green button one time. We've now turned our program off. We can change to the heart program or any other programs you might have saved on here. But let's select program 0. And we have two ways to start our program. We can press the green button on our hub, or we can press the play button on our computer. I like to use the play button on the computer if it's close, because that will send the current version of the code to our robot. So if you make any changes, you always have to push the play button on your computer. So let's play it again. And it starts by turning. And no matter where you set it, it's going to turn to the right. So you could have it face you. Great. This is a good way to make our robot turn. But what I want to do is let's dive into it and see why that works. So up here at the top, click on your hub. It says Open Hub Connection. It's got a green check mark on it. I can see our motors are there. I see a picture of our hub. And then I see some text right here. I see yaw, 176. I see pitch is 1. Roll is -1. I see my battery charge. And then I also see my motors on here. What I want you to do is see if you can figure out I want you to see if you can figure out what yaw, pitch, and roll all are. So pick up your robot and see how those numbers start to change. Try rolling your robot over and see what number changes the most. Try tilting your robot up and down and see what that affects. And then holding your robot kind of flat, start to rotate it to the right, rotate it to the left. And each time you make these movements, you'll see some big changes in one number. All the numbers will change a little bit because we can't hold this perfectly still. But you'll notice when I rotate it this way, keeping it flat on above my hand but turning left and right, the yaw changes. When I tilt it back or forward, I see that pitch changes. That's the pitch of my hub. And then whenever I roll it over, you got it, your roll degrees change. So I can set my robot down, and we're going to be working today with yaw. So keeping your robot on the table, you can turn it to 90 degrees, you can turn it back to 180 or 0, and you'll notice that at a certain number, it jumps from positive numbers to negative numbers. And then if you turn it all the way around, you'll go from a 0 to counting to negative numbers as well. So it looks like our yaw, the highest number is 180 and the lowest number is negative 180. Let's click that little X at the top of our screen, and now we can see our code. And so now we can change our robot so that it starts to change directions or make a turn in a different way. So when the program starts, set yaw angle to 0. What that means is no matter which way your robot is pointing, it's going to say that is straight ahead. So it sets the yaw angle to 0. And then we tell it to start moving and wait until the yaw angle is greater than 89. So if we push play, we'll make a 90-degree turn from wherever we start. And let's change this number to, I don't know, let's try 170. Actually, let's change it to 178. And let's see what happens. We hit play. And I see it turns all the way around. It basically makes a 180-degree turn. Now let's do a test. Let's see what happens if we say 180. Now I know the yaw sensor only goes up to 180, so I wonder if it's going to register or if it's not going to register and just keep on turning. Just keeps on turning because it can't go over 180. Once our yaw sensor gets to 180, it switches to negative numbers, so be prepared to hit that stop button. So we know that we can go between 179 and negative 179, and it should work. So we'll try it with 179. That didn't work, and the reason it's not working is it's going so fast that when it takes the sensor reading, it doesn't recognize 179. So that's why if we want to turn backwards, we'll cap it at about 175, because it'll register that it's turned all the way around. No problem. Here's what we're going to do next. We're going to move this code out of the way when left button is pressed and when right button is pressed. We'll keep them in our program, and let's change our code to number 1. This way we have the original code saved as 0, and the new code will be saved under program 1. And let's start changing this when program starts. I want our robot to drive in a square. I want it to drive in about a 20 centimeter square. So here's what we'll do. We are going to find our movement blocks, and we're going to say move forward, and not rotations, I want centimeters. And let's say move forward 20 centimeters. And then I like to put a pause in, and this just gives our robot a chance to wait a second, realize where it is, and then move on. So we're going to wait 1 second. We're going to set the yaw angle to 0, and I want it to start moving to the right. But I only want it to go 90 degrees, because we're trying to drive in a square, and every corner of a square is 90 degrees. So I'm going to wait until my yaw angle is greater than 89, and then I want it to stop. I want it to wait 1 more second. And let's just test this out and see what happens. So what we should have is a robot that drives forward and then turns to the right 90 degrees. We'll push play to send this program to our bot. Drives forward, it waits, and then it turns. That to me looked like it turned a little bit more than 90 degrees, but we'll let it work. Maybe we'll lower this down to about 85, because it has some momentum where it keeps on turning. And let's just see if that looks more like a 90-degree turn. Push play, drives forward, turns. That looks a little closer to 90 degrees. Still a little bit overturning from the momentum, but that'll be fine for what we're doing. Now I like that movement, and I could rewrite this code 4 more times to make a square, but we're going to use something called a loop today. And so this loop we're going to use, it says repeat 10, and you'll see it kind of looks like a mouth. We're going to put this loop right here so that it encapsulates. Move forward, wait 1 second, set yaw angle to 0, start moving right, wait until, stop moving, wait, and then repeat. So let's see what happens when we push play, and instead of doing it 10 times, let's leave it at 10 times. Great, so my robot will do this 10 times. It'll make 10 turns. But if I'm thinking about a square, how many turns do I need to make a square? What would you change this repeat block to in order to make a square and stop? Let's try it with 4. Great. We drove in a square, we made 4 turns, and ended up back about where we started. So now we've practiced making some turns. We're on to our next challenge, where we're going to start making some obstacles for our robot to drive around. I want you to get some good practice in creating a path for your robot to follow. You now know how to make precise turns using that yaw angle. So let's make a little obstacle course using just a couple of bricks. So I'm going to use just my 2 red ones. I'm going to have my starting line be right here, and I'm going to put a brick here and a brick here, and I want my robot to get to the other end of the table. It can't drive straight, because if it just drives straight, it's going to run right over the brick. So here's what we'll do. We're going to click down here and change our program to program 2. And so now program 1 is still saved on here, but any changes we make are still saved on our hub, so we can always go back to that square driving robot. I am going to delete everything in my code, and we'll build this from scratch. I'm going to leave when program starts, set movement speed to 50%, set 1 motor rotation to 17.5 centimeters. We always put that code at the beginning of a robot that uses 2 motors and 2 wheels to drive. That way it's easy to change the speed. I'm going to slow mine down a little bit. And it makes it so that the computer or the hub knows which motors to use. So when our program starts, it looks like I'm going to be able to drive forward. I think I can drive forward 1 rotation. So I'm going to tell mine to move forward 1 rotation from that starting line. And I just want to test this out and see, does that get close enough to the brick? Great. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to tell it to stop moving, just to make sure it stops. And now we need to set our yaw angle to 0. I want our robot to set this as 0 so that it can start to turn. And then I'm going to open up my hub and see how far I really need to turn. So my yaw is 0 right now. I want my robot to turn to this angle, and that looks like 50. I'd like my robot to turn to the right 50 degrees. So I'll close this out. I set yaw angle to 0. And I'm going to tell my robot to start moving. And this says right 30. I like to change this to a high number, so I'm going to change it to right 100. This will just make a tighter turn. It'll move, or it'll turn in place rather than trying to start a circle. So start moving right 100. And now I'm going to tell it to wait until. So I go to Control, I collect a wait until block, and now I need an operator. And my operator is wait until blank is greater than 100. So I'll put that right in there, and I need to fill in that blank. And that blank is going to be this angle block. It's a circle, I see it fits in there. But I don't want the pitch. The pitch would be if my robot was moving up and down, which my robot's not going to do that. I want the yaw angle. And I tested it out earlier, and I remember I want my yaw angle to go about 55 degrees. Once it's gone 55 degrees, I want to tell it to stop moving. So I'm going to drag this stop down. Let's put my robot back in the starting spot. Let's push play. And now I should see it drive forward and then turn to avoid that block. Great. And let's say we want, once it turns, I want it to move forward. I don't know, let's try 15 centimeters. I'll push play. That sends the new code to my bot. Drives forward. Great, I've avoided this first brick, but now I need to get past this next brick. And let's do a quick experiment and just see if we can tell it to start moving in kind of a circular motion to avoid this brick. So we could just turn in place and drive forward, but I want to see if we could use a circular rotation to do that. So let's start play again, get it back to where it was. And then I'm going to tell it to start moving. And we don't want to go right. Right would be that way. I'm looking the direction my robot's going, and I want it to go left. So I'm going to say start moving left. Let's say 50. And then I might count to see how long it needs to go. So let's try this. Drive forward, make a precise turn. Now we're going to start turning this way. And it'll just keep going in circles if we don't do anything. So I'm going to push my button to stop. And I'm going to say Control, wait 1 second, and then stop moving. Let's see if that gets us pointed in the correct direction. Almost. We need to go a little over 1 second. So let's say 1.5 seconds, 1.5 seconds. And I'm doing this as an example just to show you that you could do guesswork to make those precise those turns, but I think using the yaw sensor makes it much more precise and much faster in coming up with a plan. All right, so we're aimed in the correct direction. So now I can tell it to start moving forward again. Let's say 2 rotations. So my robot should be able to now go from its start location, get around this first brick, get around this second brick, and get to what I think should be my finish line. So we press play, we drive forward, go around it. Ooh, almost went off the table. Excellent, so we made it through this field. So we've created our square. Now what I want you to do is I want you to place 8 bricks out here. So get all your bricks that look like this, and your challenge on your own is to create a program that'll get your robot from one side of your table or one side of your building area to the other, avoiding all 8 bricks. Lay them out, give them some space in between, and you're going to come up with a path for your robot to follow, and you're going to code it using that yaw angle or start moving left or right, waiting a certain amount of time. And I want you to get through your field of bricks without running into any of them. So this is your challenge to do on your own. You've seen 2 different ways to make your robot turn. One last thing that I think we need to make sure we have for you. So, we learned how to make a right turn, but we need to learn how to make a left turn as well using that yaw angle sensor. And in our lesson, we don't have a less than number. And when we turn left, our yaw angles are going to go into the negatives right away. So if we're using greater than, you're almost always going to be greater than when it starts, so your robot will drive in a line. So here's what we'll do. We click on Lesson, we click on Spike Prime, and now it gave us a lot of operators. But you'll see one of them is this one right here. And so our program, I'm going to make a change to it. I'm going to take my yaw angle out of here, and I'm going to take this green block out and put it here. So now I say yaw angle less than 100. So if I want to start moving left, so earlier we moved to the right 100, now we're going to move to the left 100, and that'll make our numbers go into the negatives. And I want to say, wait until our yaw angle is less than negative 55. So as we're turning to the left, we'll go -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, all the way up to 55, and that'll make us do a left turn. So for right turns, we're going greater than. I'll leave that right there. For left turns, we want to say, wait until yaw angle's less than. So let's test it out. We should see this drive forward and then start to turn to the left. Great. That worked just fine, where it turned to the left 55 degrees. So now you can make a left turn and a right turn using that yaw angle. Now, if that yaw angle is confusing for you, you could always do the guess and check method, which is start moving and then wait a certain number of seconds. But here's your challenge. Set out your bricks and try to navigate through 8 bricks by writing a long line of code that gets you there. I hope you have a wonderful time experimenting with this challenge. This one is a big challenge because moving a robot through a field of obstacles can be tough, but I know you can do it. You're going to use those move forward, start moving left or start moving right, wait until yaw angle is greater than a number for right turns, waiting until it's less than for a left turn, and then use those stops. If you run into any problems, feel free to email me, call me, or book a Zoom meeting, and we can troubleshoot your problem live. I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much.